All right, Deuteronomy 15, let's call this one Open Your Hand, and it is going to talk about a part of the law that is probably a little bit tougher for the Israelites to deal with if they haven't found a portion that's tough to follow already. This is a part of the sabbatical year that is going to say whether or not you are looking at the possibility of being repaid fully when you lend. You need to lend anyway. And in doing that, you need to keep three things in mind. First of all, your poor brother. Two, the poor in general. And then three, remember your past or where you came from. That'll help overcome any desire to harden your heart against lending to people in situations where you might not get paid back. Beginning, first and foremost, he's going to acknowledge that this might be tough to do, but he's going to say, if only you will strictly obey the voice of the Lord your God, being careful to do all this commandment that I command you today. That's verse 5 of chapter 15, where he is then going to go in to talk about the sabbatical year and say that, look, even if your brother, going toward the end of the chapter, gets so poor that he has to sell himself into slavery, you are to let him go in the 7th year or the sabbatical year, and not just let him go. You're supposed to let him go well set up for life after his servitude or his service to you. But if it doesn't get that bad, earlier in the chapter, he's going to say if he's just poor and you have to lend to him, but you have to lend to him in a close proximity to the sabbatical year, and it potentially looks like you might not get paid back in full, don't harden your heart and don't play games with the command, which is fundamentally to make sure you give him everything he needs. If giving him everything he needs makes it look like you might not get paid back, understand God can repay you, and that's my ad lib. But there are other parts in the word where it talks about, look, you can't really outgive God. And so he loves a cheerful giver is something we will hear in the new covenant. This is something that, once again, Jesus is going to reiterate in a certain way, not in a parable that directly corresponds, but when he is answering a question from Simon Peter about how often should I forgive, he offers the famous parable of the unforgiving servant, a man who was forgiven a tremendous debt, but then went out and shook down one of his fellow servants for a pretty sizable sum that they owed him, but still nothing in comparison to what he was forgiven. And so for failing to forgive in a situation where he had been forgiven, he was declared a wicked servant. And that goes back to the part where God is saying, look, if this seems difficult, remember how you as a people were released from Egypt, and understand that God did not send you out empty-handed, but he made sure that you were set up to become the nation that you will be if you follow these rules, no matter how difficult they might seem. And so once again, perspective is key here, because if you are a person who is looking at hard times, then concepts like the sabbatical year seem like a great relief. But if you have it and you could otherwise, given a situation where you're likely to get your money back, it can seem like it's really tough to do. But Deuteronomy 15 reminds us that the tough parts of the law are still parts of the law. And moreover, if you're not simply grudgingly giving or grudgingly obeying the law, you never know ways in which God will return the blessing to you. In this passage, there is an option for an individual who, if they were treated well enough, could stay in a situation where they could otherwise be released with a pocket full of starting over money. But if they were in a situation where they were treated well enough, the starting over money might pale in comparison to simply being in a situation where you're treated well. And so understand this. There are times when it can be tough to give, but we never know the ways in which God will repay us. But even if we never get repaid, Deuteronomy 15 is reminding us that part of the key to overcoming the difficulty in helping someone who is genuinely in need is remembering times in which we were genuinely in need, which is once again why we sometimes say God's best to you as you go forward in him, recalling the times where you were in need, whether it involved money or not.